batches of 3, and we've got a roving mic as well. Where are our roving mics? If you could put your hands up. One there and one there. Okay, so please put your hands up. Okay, so we'll start with these 3 at the front. There's a lady at the front here, a lady at the front here, a lady at the second row. I will come to you people at the back next. Yes, if you could ask a question. Yeah.
My name's Vicky Wharton. I used to work in...
Can you just make sure you speak right into the microphone?
My name is... Oh, there we are. My name is Vicky Wharton. I used to work in PR, and so I used to use the media quite a lot for changing public attitudes. I would like to ask the panel what difference they think would happen if we actually included pornography under the heading of mainstream male media. Because it seems to me that it's going to be very, very difficult for us to ever make any headway in a society where one half of the people call the other half bitches and whores and think it's entertaining and promote rape and child abuse.
Okay, thank you. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is just down here.
Thank you. My name is Kate Grusing. I run a search business called Sapphire Partners. And Ruth, I'm especially pleased, obviously, for the progress of women on boards, but we haven't seen that progress, as you know all too well, in executive roles or in business. And I'm interested in your thoughts on, obviously, the Davies inquiry was a great linchpin, and some might say that was a wonderful brainwave of the new government to garner interest from women voters, but what could be a linchpin to unlocking the talent of women in business below that board level, or what could the Foster Society do to really shine a light on that? Because boards are very easy to track and monitor, but it's the women through the pipeline where I think it's much less clear how much talent we're wasting.
Okay, thank you. And then lady here with the scarf. I've seen the gentleman there. I'll get you next time. Thank you.
Linda Corsha. This is a real outrage for you, Mary. Chance to get it out of the back pages. I don't think anyone would argue about the core, although it's about women at the top, I don't think anyone would argue about the core importance of women's jobs and how women are losing jobs, as we heard earlier. But women are about to be pushed out of jobs wholesale with an EU-India free trade agreement allowing Indian firms to supply unlimited temporary cheap labour into the UK. So you can imagine the effect on all the women working in some sort of IT work right across sectors. Caroline Lucas held the privileged position of MEP on the European Parliament's International Trade Committee for years, knowing all about this, but chose and still chooses not to warn women about it so it can be resisted. So, in fact, maintaining that official secrecy and, in fact, perpetuating, exacerbating women's economic disadvantage. So the question, how do we get women with integrity and with moral values into top positions and not just they're looking after themselves?
Okay, thank you very much. So just to recap, there was a question on pornography there. In terms of how can we talk about the media if we're not going to tackle that. And I think I'll pass that. I'll give you all 3 of you an opportunity to answer that. And then I think perhaps, Ruth, I'll come to you on the executive roles, sure, and Caroline to kick off on the last point, of course, which was on women with integrity. So, Ruth, sorry, yes, Ruth, if you can start your thoughts on the pornography question.
It's funny. I think I managed to live in quite a sheltered world, and I still get completely shocked when I sit on the train and somebody's reading The Sun, and suddenly you just get faced with this picture. It's genuinely beyond my belief. I do not understand why do we still have that. Why is that acceptable? And it just wouldn't be acceptable to have a man there with his kit out. This is not a clever academic answer. I don't understand why we still have it. Every time somebody sends me an email petitioning against it, I immediately petition and forward it to as many people as I can think of. I find it absolutely horrific.
And on the question around executive roles, there was a question about
Yes.
what can we do about women who are not at the top? What about women at the lower levels of business generally?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I don't pretend that putting women on boards is the answer to everything. This issue has to be addressed at every single level of organisations. It is relatively easy to report on the figures on boards because companies are mandated to report those figures. We are pushing for greater gender metric reporting so that we can, so that everyone can see what's going on across all of these industries. We at Cranfield have a big project launching next year looking at women in the pipeline. One of the myths that we continually try to bust is organisations find it so easy to say, well, yes, we take 50% graduate intake, but then, of course, we lose them because of motherhood, which is undoubtedly a factor, but it's only one of many, many factors. The reason why we focus on women on boards is that, to Caroline's point, if you do not see anybody above you in an organisation who looks anything like you, you will not stay there and you will not strive to get to those positions. So to Kate's point, absolutely agree. We need greater transparency of what's going on across organisations. We're doing one a bit. We're trying to start to do research in another bit as well.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, I mean, anything on that? Or also, I think the question was about, how can we do anything about the media whilst pornography remains a mainstream part of it?
Could I just ask Vicky a bit, the pornography you're talking about, I mean, is that, you're not talking presumably, or maybe you are, about sort of page 3 in The Sun, or are you talking separately about real kind of hardcore pornography? Yeah, okay, fine. Well, look, I mean, as everybody here knows, that whatever's on the online, on the internet, is incredibly hard to regulate. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try. I'm absolutely all in favour of regulating that, and I'm 100% behind you. What?
Okay. We cannot get into a one-on-one because there's many people who want to ask questions.
I think they are separate things. I mean, the mainstream media is not and would not. I know there are papers like the Daily Star and the Sun which are kind of blurring the guidelines, but I don't think that's quite what we're talking about. We could get into a long debate about page 3 and whether that should be banned. Nick Clegg was quite interesting on that, but that perhaps isn't the moment to do that now. Could I just add a word on your question about cheap labour? I mean, I'm no expert on what the situation is as far as India's concerned, but I do think in general that this all gets very tied up with immigration debates and so on. In general, I'm less keen on keeping people out than on putting a proper floor underneath wages and conditions so you don't get people exploited, whether it be British people who are losing their jobs or whether it's people coming in from abroad with the hope of a better life who are being exploited by employers here, by gangmasters and so on and so forth. So I think there's a real case. We're always hearing about the case for less red tape, less bureaucracy. Let's have some proper regulation.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to give Caroline a chance to respond on that particular point if she wants, but I'm particularly interested, I think, the question in a way, do you think women politicians are somehow under greater pressure to be seen to be good for women? And do you think that's right, if that's the case?
Do I think that that women are under greater pressure to be...
There is greater pressure to be seen to be having more integrity in terms of women's rights, to do better for women, and do you think that that's right, that women politicians, as opposed to male politicians, are expected to somehow seem to do better for women?
I think whenever you're in a minority, then there's more pressure on you to demonstrate the full, the full potential and all the best possible things of the group that you represent. And if you're the only representative, or there are only few of you, then obviously I think that pressure is all the greater. I mean, on the issue that we've just been touching on in terms of free trade agreements and so forth, as I understand the issue with the EU-India trade agreement, the real concern that you were just mentioning was around the outsourcing of jobs. So what you're seeing is company bosses here seeing that there's good profits for them to be had. So it's not a question of people actually crossing borders, it's probably IT things and so forth being done electronically, but those jobs going out to India, not because there's any great love of supporting people in India.
Can I please ask people not to get into a one-to-one, because other people would like to ask a question, and I'm sure that you can... Yeah, okay. Can you please?
I really object to that. I may have misunderstood your point, but I'm not lying. And to that same subject, in terms of being opposed to EU free trade agreements, I would challenge you to look at anybody in the European Parliament with a stronger record than the Greens, of which I was a part, of challenging EU free trade agreements, not least because they generally are in the interests of EU big business and not in the interests of ordinary people, whether they be ordinary people in the EU or ordinary people in developing countries. And so, you know, that I think is absolutely the case, which is why the Greens have tended to vote against them. The EU has an incredibly aggressive free trade policy that it pursues through these EU trade agreements. They're often dressed up as if they're about delivering benefits to some of the poorest people. But if you look at who's got the real power in those agreements, it is the bosses of EU companies. I misunderstood you. I thought you were talking about outsourcing jobs. I'm thinking about things like, for example, one of the issues that's come up for me in my constituency is some of the jobs around some of the banks that we actually own. A lot of those outsourcing jobs around accountancy and stuff is now being done in poorer countries. And that's pushing people out of work here in the UK.
It is an important issue, but I think we're straying from the main topic at hand.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes,
I want to go back to page 3 in pornography, because again, I know that the person speaking there wasn't specifically talking about page 3. To the contrary, you were talking about what's available on the internet. But I do actually think there's a spectrum there, and I think it's all part of that same culture. And the more that you have page 3 being completely acceptable as you travel along in the tube, and it's like, you know, it's not just you, it's your kids, and everybody else has to be polluted by this stuff, then I think it's more likely that you move into that other spectrum to the much more dangerous kind of pornography that you see on the internet. And that's why I'm really pleased that there is a move in Parliament to go back to the banning the page 3. I shall be there on the barricades, and I hope plenty of you will be too.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to take 3 more questions. If you keep your questions very brief, please, because I'm conscious that at least a couple of our speakers have got to be other speaking events quite soon. Okay, so there was a lady at the back up here, there's one at the front there, and one at the very back there. So there's a lady with the blue top. I'm going to come to you the next round. Lady with the blue top. Can't see if you're a lady or a gentleman from here. Lady, sorry, in the middle there. And then a woman over there with a blue cardigan. Okay.
Yes, hello. My name's Deborah King. I'm a member of an organisation called Disability Politics. There is some good news, which I'd be grateful if Fawcett and the members of the panel could help spread the word about, which is that John McDonnell, MP for Hayes and Harlington, is presenting a bill in November to introduce job sharing for members of Parliament. There's also an e-petition, which it would be great if people could get some publicity for and send round to their friends. So that would be something I hope that will support Caroline's long-standing campaign in terms of job sharing for members of Parliament and hopefully get more women MPs.
Thank you very much. And there's a lady in the middle.
Thank you. My name is Helen Parker-Jana-Sabor. I'm the founder of Just Today charity. I believe that there's a crisis of confidence within many females in executive positions as well as graduates. And I also believe that what gets you to the top is the beginning of the journey that keeps you there. And I think the qualities in women that you described earlier in terms of being good team leaders, good team players, and also good listeners are also possibly what could be argued what keeps us from the top in the first place. Now, how do we encourage graduates to really go for such positions and go for such roles? I remember graduating, and for some reason I became a PA. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'd chosen to do something that I could have done a lot more. Okay, I'm now the founder of a charity, but I'm just wondering, what can we do about the crisis of confidence? Because we're also not knocking down the doors enough.
Okay, thank you very much. And then the lady in the far left-hand corner on your... Yeah.
Hi, my name's Jane Duval. I'm a partner in a city law firm. And I actually have quite a, slightly different question from the lady before. I'd like to ask Ruth what she thinks about quotas and effective quotas. I have been in city law for 20 years, and throughout most of that time, at entry level, women have been in the majority. And throughout that entire time, the proportion of women in partnership has barely moved. And in fact, the income gap is widening still. And I look at the increase in non-exec director ratio and how the executive director proportion has stayed exactly the same. And women, although on the face of it are advancing, are in fact getting nowhere in terms of real power. What I'd like to ask all of you actually, what your view on quotas is in that regard. Thanks.
Okay, I'm just going to come to Caroline first and then Mary. So Caroline, particularly maybe if you want to comment on the job share and also this idea, what about the crisis of confidence in women? Are our strengths also our weaknesses?
Yeah, I mean, that last point I think is very interesting. You know, that the very qualities that we value, as you were saying, by the time that people have got to the top are actually not necessarily ones that are conducive to getting there in the first place. And I think that goes right back to how different sort of responses are valued, you know, as kids are being growing up, the kind of messages and so forth they get in popular culture. I mean, I think it goes really back to the way in which certain traits appear to be valued more than others, and I'm thinking of being more competitive, and all of those things tend to be things that get positive feedback in a way that perhaps being more cooperative and so forth doesn't. So my short answer to the point is that I don't think it's a quick thing to change, but I absolutely agree with you that it's an important thing to change. On the job sharing, yes, John McDonnell, it's great. He's been pulled number one out of the hat in terms of the priority in the private members' ballot. So that means there will be a discussion and hopefully a vote on the issue of job sharing MPs. I think we've got quite a job to do to persuade some of our MP colleagues. I don't know if anybody heard a Today programme interview about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but there was Meg Hillier from Labour Party doing a very good job of defending job sharing against this dinosaur of a man that actually, if anybody was listening, it probably would have put more people on our side because he was just scoffing at it in such a completely hysterical way. And it was the same arguments that have always been trotted out every time that job sharing has ever been suggested, that, you know, well, you're not going to agree with one another and what was going to happen and so forth. And I'm quite sure that if the political will were there, it would be perfectly possible to design a way in which, you know, people, the population as a whole will get better value, if you like, out of their MPs, because we're not talking about doubling the wages or anything, so you'd have that salary split between 2 MPs. I think you'd have a much better chance of linking the constituency work to the parliamentary work, but crucially you'd have a much better chance of having, again, that diversity of people represented, whether that's women or people with disabilities or whoever. So I think it's a good idea, and I wish John McDonnell very well with it. And it's Green Party policy to have 40% women on boards, just for the reference.
Okay, Mary, I'm particularly interested, our strengths or our weaknesses, your thoughts on that?
Okay, fine.
Or anything else you would like to?
Well, I think on the crisis of confidence and how you sort of the route to the top, if you like. To me, it's all a matter of education, better education, girls taught in a way that inspires them much more than goes on at present. I think state schools are improving enormously, but I think it all starts very early in people's school days, well, even before that. So to me, education is what it's all about. Just very briefly on the job sharing, I think it's a really brilliant idea. I mean, job sharing always works well because what happens is that you get 2 really brilliant women doing about 4 times as much work as one sort of male incumbent might do. So it strikes me that if that also happens to suit them, that's an absolute win-win, and let's see a great deal more of it in Parliament. If I could just hark back to the previous round, and on banning page 3 by statute through Parliament, I would only caution, do think carefully. If you start, repugnant as page 3 might be, much as we'd all like to see it go, if you start getting the state saying what can and can't be in newspapers, just think of the shadowy world of secrets and untruths and things that are so difficult to disclose at the moment under our libel laws and so on. Just think of the precedent you're setting, is all I would caution.
I think a debate topic for another time, and I should invite you both back to discuss the role of censorship or not in terms of pornography. 10 seconds literally on quotas, because I want to ask you a final question before you ask speakers.
Okay, 10 seconds on quotas. My opinion changes daily. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said yes, we need them. I'm optimistic at the moment, but come back and ask me in a year's time. If it doesn't carry on, yes, we need them. I personally do not think it would be a complete disaster economically for the UK, because we've got all of the women.
Because I have to, but our speakers have to go, and I want to do a last chair's privilege question before they go to end us on a positive note. And of course, we'll be around and willing to talk to people afterwards. And here's my last question. I'm interested to hear from you, panellists, Can you just tell us, before we depart, about a woman or group of women who has inspired you, who has obtained power and influence, and what it is about them that you admire? And I'm going to start with you, Mary.
Okay, I'm going to nominate two, if I may. First of all, Mary Robinson, who's the old president of Ireland, who's a member of the Elders. I've travelled round DR Congo and Rwanda with her and seen her working in Westminster. I've seen her hold very slippery heads of state to account, Presidents Kabila and Kagame in Congo and Rwanda, and I've seen the work she does on the ground to improve the lot of the poorest women and children in the world. I think she's fantastic, and I'd just add also praise for my old friend Glenys Kinnock, who I've also travelled around Africa with, who does very much the same sort of job and makes a jolly good fist of it, and I think both of them give women a very good name.
Thank you. And Caroline?
I was going to go for Frances O'Grady. I'm delighted that she's been made the new head of the TUC, an incredible male world, and she's got to be the head of it, and I think that's fantastic in terms of the role model she sets doing that. If I can just include a couple of sadly dead people, but Petra Kelly was a huge inspiration for me, the German Green, who really didn't compromise her principles. She was an amazing politician in Germany, one of the first Green Party members to be elected. And I just want to say the other thing, there are all sorts of weird and wonderful ways of getting around Westminster to get from my office to the actual main chamber. And the way I go is actually a slightly longer way through some certain corridors that take me past the shawl that Emily Wilding Davidson was wearing when she was killed in front of the horses of the King when she was protesting for women's suffrage. And I just find that inspirational when I'm sort of thinking, oh God, I've got to go into the chamber and say things that are going to be deeply unpopular and it's not going to be very nice. Then you just kind of feel invigorated as you go past that, thinking that people do, they do what they really care for, and it's very important.
Thank you. Ruth, again, very briefly.
Just the two figures from my childhood plus my mum. Emily Pankhurst, I just remember learning about her at school and was just completely enthralled that somebody would go to such lengths to make a point for other people. And Shirley Williams, just because my mum was a teacher and she always used to get me to listen to Radio 4 whenever Shirley Williams was speaking and would explain what Shirley Williams was doing and why. And she just seemed to be this complete stalwart for education and therefore had a big impact on me as a child.
Thank you so much. And can I just say as Caroline scuttles, leaves gracefully, yes. Left stage, right exit. Obviously, I wanted to ask a question because we had some very dark statistics today, and it's always very difficult. It's an ongoing challenge not to forget, the amazing, powerful, inspirational women in history, but also the exceptional women who came and spoke today, and I think we're very honest. So I'd like you all to say thank you very much to our speakers. And also, of course, I was thinking about, it's going to sound a bit hammy, but, who inspires me? But one of the people I was thinking about is also the individuals, okay? Individual women who in their everyday lives make the difference. And also, I should say, who make up our membership, who come up to events like this today. So I'd like to thank all of you who are members already. And also, if you're not a member, joining us does make a big difference because all of those individual women joining together, that is the power and influence that we need. So if you're not a member, please, there are forms in your packs. I hope you've really enjoyed this today. We're going to be emailing you afterwards to get any ideas you have for future events, so have a think about that. And of course, we are a charity, it's tight financial times, we have to extend this venue to fit you all in, and indeed the creche. So if anybody feels they want to give us a voluntary donation to cover that on the way out, we would be more and more grateful. But I just wanted to finally thank you all for coming, and of course our amazing team of staff and volunteers and interns and our voluntary board members, and Sadler's Wells, who helped us out today. Thank you very much to all of them. And please do mill around for a cup of tea outside. Thank you. Thank you. Tea and coffee upstairs. Thank you very much.